Today is February 24th, 2020. Teck Resources Limited announced earlier today that they are not going ahead with a $20 billion oil and gas project in northern Alberta that would have created thousands of jobs and that would have provided governments with billions and billions of dollars in tax revenues. This happens to come after 2 weeks of protesters shutting down Canadian railway lines, preventing the movement of people, the movement of goods, and inflicting serious harm on the Canadian economy. Now, the Canadian Charter of Rights and Freedoms talks about the rule of law as a foundational principle. The opening words of the Charter say, "Whereas Canada is founded upon principles that recognize the supremacy of God and the rule of law." The rule of law means that we are under law. We're not subject to the whims of the king or the clamoring of a mob. It also means that the law applies to everybody, even the king and even the king's favorites. Countries that uphold the rule of law tend to thrive economically, culturally, socially. The rule of law, among other things, provides investors with confidence to invest in business projects that create jobs. But conversely, the world's poorest and most violent countries are those where politicians and the friends of politicians are above the law is not certain, and the law is not enforced. Now, Canadian politicians have been repudiating the rule of law by condoning the protesters engaging in blatantly illegal activity of shutting down railroad lines just because they have very strong political feelings. And this is playing favorites because the rallying cry of the protesters is Aboriginal rights, and we all know that Prime Minister Trudeau is sympathetic to that cause, and for that reason, he's letting them get away with it. I mean, do you believe for a minute that if some fed-up taxpayers occupied a federal government building in Ottawa, that Trudeau would reach out to them and want to listen to their concerns? Or do you think if pro-lifers shut down an abortion clinic in Toronto, that the Prime Minister would invite them to tea and want to learn more about their grievances? Or if Western separatists blockaded the Burrard Street Bridge in Vancouver, that the Prime Minister would say that we need to listen and tell Canadians to be more patient? I mean, I think we all know how quickly and how decisively the authorities would move in and put an end to lawlessness. The consequences of repudiating the rule of law, which Prime Minister Trudeau and other politicians have been doing, is one, you're going to encourage more lawlessness. Secondly, investors like Teck Resources are not going to invest their money in Canada and create jobs here. Thirdly, law-abiding citizens are going to get cynical about the law and there'll be less respect for all laws if they can just be flaunted at will. And lastly, if some people can get away with law breaking just because they have the correct grievances, that's going to create a lot of social tension, disunity, social mistrust. There is a cost to enforcing the rule of law. No doubt if we deal decisively with lawbreakers the way that we should, you're going to have some people say that we're a bunch of fascists and worse. But the cost of repudiating the rule of law and moving towards becoming a third world country are much higher. I'm John Carpay. Thanks for listening.